This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyler. My guest today is Sophia Wise One. Sophia is originally from Philly, but is currently in Taos, which, as I just learned, I'm confusing with Tucson in Arizona. You are in New Mexico, I learned.
Yes.
Yes. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
I'm very, very excited to have you here. So, Sophia, you are a singer, a speaker, podcaster, a transformational storyteller, and you also work with ancestral relationships, which I'm curious to find out more about because we are talking about learning from our female ancestors. Will you tell me more about your work and yourself?
Yeah. So I will just kind of jump right on in with the ancestral piece. So I do this work that I call soul unification, right? So it's just this process of through meditation, through body-based practices, through breathing techniques, having an experience of really just becoming more of yourself. Okay. And one of the things that I help people do is connect with their intuition, connect with their spirit guides, and connect with their ancestors. And I believe that and have experienced and witnessed that we have the ability to, through connecting with our ancestors, actually reclaim some of the practices that we have lost or forgotten. So to me, it's not theoretical, and it's very solid that our ancestors are with us. They're with us in our body. They're with us in our epigenetics, that pass down, that there's this knowledge that we carry in our own being that comes from our ancestors, as well as just having this kind of inherent understanding. Ever since I was a kid, I was like a little baby mystic, talking to my ancestors and having memories about before this life and things like that. So for me, all of that's very normal. I know for some people that's like special or weird or not real, kind of people have different perspectives on it. For me, it's just always been there. And what I've done over the years is cultivate these practices that help connect so that individuals can have very real relationships with their ancestors. So I don't just teach people how to do it the way that I do it. What I do is I guide people so that they can have relationships with their ancestors so that they are real and tangible. So as real for them as they are for me, even if it's experienced differently. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I find it fascinating. And a few years ago, that study came out where they found the stress of our ancestors in our DNA. Mm-hmm. Do you know that study? It's proven that we inherit the stress and the life experiences through the DNA, which is very, very fascinating, especially when you think of something like Holocaust and a whole big groups of people who inherit huge amounts of pain and stress from generation to generation.
Absolutely. Immigration, migration, a long term, I think about the indigenous people on Turtle Island here in the United States, we're going on centuries of the attempted eradication, right? And so all of those different things. And that marker is sometimes referred to as epigenetics. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I am familiar with that. And yeah. I understand that our kind of science and medical system and framework is always oriented towards the problem. And so, of course, they would find signs that the stress is passed down first. And I know that just kind of in my own knowing, we'll see if it's true or not, but I believe that they're going to be able to mark and find and identify our gifts and our skills from generations back, multiple generations. So not just the stress or the burdens that we've carried, but the gifts and the lessons, I believe, are also carried in our DNA.
I love that so much. Thank you for saying this. This means so much to me and to this podcast. Because I was just thinking, I'm preparing an episode for my mom's birthday about what I've learned from my mom. And I think the most valuable and biggest lesson is this passion for life. And I wonder if it's genetic. If I don't know, maybe she just taught me this through the way she was, but this deeply, deeply rooted just love and passion for life.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I hope I'm passing this on to Kai.
Oh, I'm sure, no doubt.
I'm working consciously on it, and it's so cute when we walk somewhere, and he's like, "Mama, look at this blue sky and the birds. Can you hear the birds?" And we are so lucky to be here right now. I'm like, yes, I'm doing something right.
Enthusiasm for life is priceless.
Yes,
it's incredible.
Enthusiasm for existence. It's the biggest luxury we have.
Absolutely.
But anyway, you are working on launching or relaunching a podcast. Did you want to talk about that?
So one is Vagina Talks, because one of the aspects of my understanding and connection with the body is the womb and menstrual reclamation, women's wisdom, sacred sexuality, even just pleasurable sexuality for that matter, just healthy, just like well-being in our bodies is just really important to me. So that's Vagina Talks. And we just talk about everything under the sun that's related in kind of being in our bodies. And then Medicine Caller is a space where it's really a place to just kind of explore with other practitioners who facilitate transformation and healing, either on a cultural level or a personal level. So shamans, medicine carriers, and then musicians, visionaries, speakers, people who motivate and shift people and create healing experiences through all sorts of different modalities.
Very exciting. I have to listen.
Come check it out.
I will.
Yeah.
Will you tell me about your Mama Grace?
Yes, I love her. Mom, I love you so much. I'm so grateful. I literally just got flustered right now. I just feel like it's very easy for me to it's like I can really slip into a place of like complete and utter bragging, really. Because one of the things that I am so appreciative about is that over the years, the depth of real relationship that she has modeled and participated and shared with me has allowed for this relationship, in my experience, to grow stronger and stronger over the course of my life. And I think that that's different. I watch a lot of people who had a relationship when they were kids and then kind of this distant relationship as adults. And to just be so grateful for her authenticity and realness with me. So Mama Grace is a trained and brilliant actress and director and storyteller. I get a lot of that from her. She's intuitive. She's deeply healing presence. And through her study of theater in I guess it was the 70s, she got exposed to yoga. And she also, oh my gosh, what a brilliant woman. She also taught special ed in the Philadelphia public school system and taught many, many, many people how to read who had been told that, would never learn how to read. And so a brilliant educator and facilitator. And when my mother got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome in the 80s when I was a child, she really had to shift kind of how she navigated in the world. And yoga it was one of the few things that she could do that wouldn't make more pain or more exhaustion. And so she really turned and deepened her relationship with yoga.
I'm sorry, I just learned through you that chronic fatigue syndrome is not just being tired, but also being in constant pain.
Yes, there's a lot of pain involved in it for most people. It is something that people often experience in kind of rounds. So the symptoms kind of peak and then subside. And sometimes they peak in a couple week cycle, and sometimes they peak in years, like year-long cycles. So people will be feeling a few months or a few years of extreme pain in their bodies and debilitating. One of the phrases that I've heard many people who have lived with chronic fatigue syndrome is the phrase, "my bones hurt." So yeah, really challenging territory. Mother of 3.
And she is adopted, you told me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So she was adopted by my Nana and Pop up in Wilkesboro, Pennsylvania. coal country, and at the time, and my grandparents were wonderful, and there were some kind of classic traditions of beating children. And so my mother's adoption combined with kind of a sequence of everybody just has we all have our story, we all have our journeys that we travel through, really, I think, formed a woman who is deeply compassionate, insightful, and struggles to feel safe, I think, or at least has. I don't want to kind of pin her where she is now. She's an epic long journey of her own healing. So,
but we got stuck with yoga. She started doing yoga because that was the only thing that didn't make the pain worse.
Right. And so she started doing yoga or she started really doing yoga, and she went and studied with Swami Satchidananda at Yogaville in Virginia and came back to Philadelphia. And back in the 80s, yoga was weirdness on the block, So there was my radical mom teaching yoga class out of the church coffee hour hall and kind of making that space. And she combined the stories of Hinduism, the teachings of yoga, the practices and the wisdom, and then also kind of over the years, right? Meditation, mindfulness, Buddhism, these many, many different practices. She combined them into her own, as many teachers do with whatever it is that they do. They start from a lineage, they come from a teacher. And some people really pass on the lineage that the teacher gave them. In this case, that would be integral yoga. Many people who develop a deep relationship with a practice and teach create their own way of understanding. And one of the things that Grace has done incredibly well is link stories to the postures. And she taught me that the postures are the teachers. So you go and you meet the teacher every time you go and you meet the posture. So you can see already, it's like she taught me a lot about being in relationship with the body as a teacher and as a guide. And so a lot of I was kind of taking notes about some of the things that I learned from her, and I could, go on and on and on. But, a number of them are so deeply in me because they came through a yoga practice that had not just a posture, but then also a story, and then not just a story, but then also either a mantra or a phrase to kind of take that lesson and apply it to life. She was one of the first teachers that taught me that you practice in this little segment of time so that you can then go and live your life differently, that you apply the practice to your life. And so she, these teachings really foundational for me. And it's very rare that I'm teaching or that my students don't know a Grace quote or 3 or 5, it's like they are catchy.
So you mentioned 2 to me. So you told me about knowing how to say no or stop, which I guess is setting boundaries.
Yes. So this is the warrior pose. And I've integrated it in myself and kind of teach my own aspects of the warrior. So I hope I can really honor her teachings here in this moment. So I also created a game, an oracle deck that has a book, a teaching, and the only guest teaching, the only other contributing author to the book is I asked my mother to give her write-up on the warrior. And so that's actually published inside my book. It's her write-up on the warrior pose. And so the first job of the warrior is to show up and to be aware and to show up with an open heart and without judgment, to have clear sight and to understand. And the second job of the warrior is to hold the boundary, to do what it is. And then the third is to do it at all costs, to be fearless and to be wholehearted and beyond your notions of limitation or fear.
I love the I would call it alchemic combination of showing up with an open heart, but setting boundaries. How awesome is that? Not closing in to set boundaries, but being open and setting boundaries.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. So in the warrior pose, people are familiar or not, it's like it's a lunge. And then you put in warrior 2, you put your hand out in front of you, kind of in front and in back. And so one of the teachings that she does in warrior 2 is she has you put up your hand and say, no, stop. not in my house. And she would have us repeat that. No, stop. And when she would give this teaching, it was always, the invitation is say no, say it with your full body, and say it without aggression. Say it with clarity. It doesn't need to be oppressive. It needs to be clear. Mm-hmm. And so this understanding of to say no and to say stop is an act of connection, communication, vulnerability, all of these things that we're talking about, not control so much as a presence.
And what about letting things roll off your back? I'm still very curious about that one. Teach me that lesson.
Yeah.
How to not carry things on my back.
Oh, well, two things come to mind for me. I literally just kind of imagine her teaching, and I think about doing shoulder rolls. And this, another one that I wrote down here is let go of broken promises. Is another thing that she says while doing shoulder rolls, bringing your shoulders up to your ears, rolling them back, and then inviting, let go of broken promises. Let it literally just with the breath, let it exhale. And then let it roll off your back, the posture of forward bending pose. So this is literally just hanging over, bending at your hips and letting your arms hang down. And this understanding of what it is to surrender through holding and honoring yourself and letting go of control. It's like if I don't need to control it, and I know that my heart and my belly and my face and my head, if I'm held and honored, then there's nothing to keep. I don't need to take it with me. Mm-hmm. It's not mine. It's not mine. And then the other thing I think about is when she teaches alligator pose or crocodile pose. Crocodiles have been, I don't know which it is, if it's alligators or crocodiles, that have been tagged on the coast of Florida. And this is a story my mother taught me. Thanks, Mama. Is tagged on the coast of Florida and then found, are you ready for this? On the coast of Africa.
Oh, wow.
Swim the ocean, that kind of strength, that kind of fortitude. What wild. Secondly, they have very thick skin. And so rolling off the back is this kind of, I think, a forward bending pose, and this notion of just letting it roll off the back. It's not yours. So just let it go. Exhale, just let it go. The other one that comes in for me when I think about that, of not taking things personally, is being in this pose and hearing the stories of alligators and crocodiles and hearing that there are accounts of shooting guns at alligators and having bullets bounce off their skin, bounce off their scales. And so the phrase, I have very thick skin. I have very thick skin. And having that be connected with an internal strength and fortitude. Mm-hmm. Of just being and then this relaxation, because the other image, think about this pose, is belly down in the sand, relaxation, soaking up the sun, and then feeling the weight of your own resilience. So all of those things come in that she taught me when you just mentioned that one phrase, let it roll off your back. Just let it roll off your back. It's not yours. It's not yours.
I'm going to write this down on a Post-it somewhere for myself.
Good.
Do you want to talk about Ganesh? We had a conversation about Ganesh, which seems to be a very important lesson in the story for you.
My upbringing was very liberal, integrated Christian. Baptized Presbyterian, confirmed Methodist, went to an Episcopal church. For me, I was really raised in an understanding of Christ consciousness, and that church was a community space and a place to go and practice. And that in my church, many stories, that all the texts of all the major religions are sacred texts. And that is definitely one of the things that my mother taught me, is that every religious text is carrying and holding and offering wisdom and insight and perspective to be taken in and then digested through our own discernment, through our own connection with our faith or our well-being. And Ganesh just always caught my attention. One is that it's the story of the child and then getting the head of an elephant. And, my mom's just such a good storyteller, so this story, it just really stuck with me. But the thing that has really stuck with me as something that I have kind of went back to for many, many years until I really became a devotee in certain ways to Ganesh, or my experience, kind of Ganesh energy that goes way beyond just the archetype or the stories, right? Like even that understanding of every divine, every story or every divine element is just that. It's an element. It's a perspective, an entry point to something that's beyond our comprehension, because I'm in human form right now. So I am limited in my ability to perceive and comprehend that which is mysterious and beyond understanding. So one of the stories that she told that just stayed with me is that she asked this question, what do you do when a stampede of elephants is coming your way? And the answer is get out of the way. And the understanding that when you call on Ganesh, when you ask for Ganesh to bless, you are calling on the power of a stampede of elephants, and that obstacles will remove themselves, and that the obstacles that don't will get trampled in a sacred clearing way. And, I have a much kind of more nuance now, like after decades of my own chanting and sitting and communing and making offerings with Ganesh as an energy and as a force in my life. And yet this understanding of the remover of obstacles being just the sheer potency of being able to ask something on my behalf to clear the path ahead of me. And that was from my childhood. That was just kind of woven into this understanding that.
So when we talked about it, I tried to sum it up with finding that stampede of elephants inside of you to clear the path for yourself when you need it. Can I simplify it to that?
I would, for me to honor the majesty and the potency that is has felt beyond myself, not necessarily as a separate way. I say absolutely yes to what you're saying. And I have felt in the same way that you go outside and the sun touches your face and the breeze blows through your hair. And it's like, do I have the sun inside me and the breeze blowing through my hair? Yes. Yes, I do. I have the breeze and the sun within me. I agree. And I can call on that. And I also can go outside and feel the sun touch my face. And in that way, Ganesh to me is both the power and the potency of clearing a path inside myself, as well as the ability to allow a force to come and clear a path in front of me.
Thank you for that. I love that clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sophia, wow, we had some amazing lessons till now. Do we have more, or should I try to sum up?
Let's see. I'm just going to throw a couple that I wrote down here. One is a teaching that comes up over and over and over again. A phrase is change is correct and desirable. And just to turn that in. And one of the things that she often has said to me when having a hard time making a decision, she said, close your eyes, brush your fingertips. So take your thumb across the tips of your fingers, and then just see where you are. So this kind of settling and inviting clear sight. And then I just want to say, my mother really taught me about hospitality, even down to nitty-gritty care of things, like to dust in the direction of the grain when you're dusting wood, and ways of kind of being in relationship and caring with things as a way of being in affection. So yeah, I think those are my kind of last little throw-ins. I mean, I could keep going, and I have a couple more on my list, but that feels good.
Like you could. It sounds like we need a episode 2 of Sophia and Grace.
Yeah, exactly. We'll bring her on. We can come on together.
I'd love to have her on. Did you ask her?
I did. I haven't heard back yet.
Okay. So please let me try to sum up, and please help me if it sounds like we need help. I need help.
Okay.
So I wrote down unconditional love. I wrote down to love and respect your body. I wrote down that yoga postures are actually teachers, and through them we can learn lessons such as saying no and stop, creating boundaries. Important for me, letting things roll off your back, not taking things personally, being aware that you do have a thick skin like a crocodile. And then we talked about the Ganesh and connecting to the stampede of elephants that are either inside of you or calling on them when you need them to clear your path and to help you go through obstacles.
Yeah.
I also have that every religious text is sacred and that we can learn from every single one of them. I have the ancestors that we talked about and how we inherit so much more from them than we are aware, actually.
Yeah.
And finally, I just wrote down what you just said, which is the change, which is correct and desirable. And to check in, if you need to make a decision, to check in with yourself and just try to understand where you are right now, which seems so simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so simple. Just like close your eyes, take your thumb across your fingertips and just see where you are now. And also just imagine, just look. It's amazing what happens when we give ourselves permission to just see, to just take a breath and relax and see. So often our confusion, our convolution comes from our resistance to accept what we already know. And so to just take a moment to just calm and be willing to know what we know is a great act of courage.
It's fantastic. It can be life-changing. I had a guest who talks about this one major big lesson from her mom. My guest was a very busy and successful doctor, and her mom noticed something is off and sat her down and said, "Is this what you want? Just check in with yourself." And she decided this is not what I want and completely changed her life. And she's a very, very, very happy person right now. So just checking in with ourselves. The answers are inside of us. Sophia, thank you so much. This was really, really very inspiring and valuable.
Well, thank you so much for having me and giving a chance to just give praise and gratitude and appreciation to my mother, who gave me everything she could. And I know in my heart and in action and in conversation that there's more that she would have loved to give me. You know, that understanding, that love, that appreciation of like, she did everything she could and she would do more and she'll do everything she can. And I have a deep understanding of in body and, you know, and when any of us drop our body. And so to just have some time to appreciate and celebrate just a little bit of what she was able to pass on to me was a total treasure. Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoy Thank You, Mama, and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You, Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.